When we recorded this story, we hadn't planned for it to be in 2 parts, so part 1 ended a little bit abruptly, and part 2 is going to start a little bit abruptly. If you haven't had a chance to go listen to part 1, I suggest you go back and do that first so that you get the layout of the case, the background of the missing person, and suspects up until this point. This case is a child abduction case, so listener discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome. What the fuck? We'll just restart that. Here we go. Hello and welcome to Three's a Crime, a true crime podcast. I'm Tori.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Lindsey.
And that's our intro.
Here we are professional podcasters.
We're podcasters, bitches. Our next suspect is a man named Edward James. Edward had been arrested for abducting another boy in Florida and was investigated in Adam's case. James apparently had told a cellmate that he had killed Adam and was pretty confident that the police would never be able to find blood in his car. During the police investigation, it was discovered that he had been gone from his apartment for 2 weeks in 1981 during this time.
Hoping you'd say it was discovered that there was blood in his
There was blood all over that fucking car.
But they did find out that in late August of 1981, he had had his seats recovered by an upholstery shop.
Oh, bitch.
Police interviewed James and recorded his statement. The statement was then run years later through a computer voice stress analysis, and no signs of deception were indicated. This, coupled with, again, a complete lack of physical evidence, police dismissed James as a suspect. Now this one...
Oh, no.
Oh, man.
This is the most wackadoo one. So, this one is Edward Edwards.
Oh, jeez.
And I feel like I might cover Edward Edwards in another story because he's a serial killer that I had never heard of. But John Cameron is a retired police detective, and he has worked on many cold cases for the FBI. And he believes, and maybe the only one that believes, that the serial killer Ed Edwards was the one who murdered Adam. Now, the reason I say that is because Cameron had started to write Edwards, and he became convinced that Edwards was the most prolific serial killer ever. He believes that he was responsible for crimes from the Black Dahlia to the Zodiac to John Benet to Teresa Halbach, the Making a Murderer girl. And then, of course, Adam Walsh, as well as others.
Yo, this picture of him in jail. He looks like a villain in a fucking Marvel movie. That's Edward Edwards.
Yeah.
Who names their kid Edward Edwards?
That's what an asshole. Somebody who ends up being a serial killer.
Right. I mean, yeah.
Now, Edwards was a serial killer, and he was actually turned in by his own daughter.
Yeah, I was going to say he has one child.
He was convicted of 5 murders, including 2 couples. According to Cameron, Edwards was so charismatic and he could blend in and make other people trust him.
Is this the motherfucker with... I think I know this. This is, fuck, sorry, go on. Jesus Christ. This is the one. This is the podcast I've been telling you motherfuckers to listen to. This is about how she found out that her father was a serial killer. And she reads his letters, and he, recorded a bunch of... It's so good.
Oh, what's the name of it?
It's called
We'll link it in our show notes.
Oh no, where are you? Fuck. The Clearing. It's called The Clearing.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's great.
I was like, that's where I've heard that bitch.
Yeah. So he was a nomad and he would adopt a new persona each place that he moved to. That said, Cameron's claims are highly controversial. And I'm not going to get into them here, but if you are interested, you can read his book. It's Me, Edward Wayne Edwards, the serial killer you never heard of. There's also a Paramount true crime series that you can watch called It Was Him, The Many Murders of Ed Edwards.
Oh, I didn't know that. His daughter is fucking awesome, so I will have to watch that.
Yeah. Kind of the final theory that I found was that Adam's alive. There are those that believe that Adam may still be alive. Photos of Adam taken before his abduction show Adam was missing his 2 front teeth, which we saw.
Yes.
But a witness who saw Adam just a few weeks before said his adult teeth hadn't grown in yet, but the head the authorities found was said to have had the adult teeth mostly grown in. As another example, true crime author Arthur J. Harris pointed to the lack of an autopsy and identification documents that are missing from the medical examiner's file.
I was wondering how exactly they matched his teeth when it wasn't someone,
An adult,
a professional, you know what I mean?
Right. Now, that said, dental records are said to appear to confirm, and John and Reve, I guess, identified it as Adam's. And I feel like at some point, did they do DNA tests? I don't know. I feel like I saw it and then I couldn't find it again that they had eventually done DNA testing. But anyway, I think it's very unlikely that Adam is still alive. So anyway, the case, over the years, these people popped up and theories popped up.
Yeah.
But the case itself was pretty much just on the shelf. It took until 2006 for the Walshes to learn what had happened at that kiosk. So,
okay,
Jesus.
good. I was wondering if we were gonna. It just seems so. One minute he was there, and 1 minute he wasn't.
right.
Yeah.
So they find out that apparently a little scuffle had broken out between the 2 sets of boys over who was going to, over turns. Because as you said, they were just all taking turns. Sure, but then a little scuffle argument broke out about that.
They're all 6 to 10-year-old boys or whatever.
Right.
Yep.
You're going to fight over that control.
A part-time security guard had come over and basically told them all to leave. Now, that guard was really just a 17-year-old girl with no actual training because Sears wouldn't hire full-time security guards.
Of course not.
And, she didn't have any training.
Oh my gosh.
So she had, I guess, gone over to the boys and asked if their parents were with them. And the older kids said no. And she was like, okay, well, you all need to leave the store. So she sent one group of boys one way and the other group, who she assumed Adam belonged with, the other way, out the west entrance, which is not the entrance that Reve had brought Adam in. So now you've got a 6-year-old with a group. So
being told by someone older who's a figure of authority that they can't be here.
And they specifically said that, Adam was a shy little boy that had been taught to respect his, respect authority. And so if somebody came and told him he needed to leave, he would have just done it.
Yeah.
Upon getting outside, the theory is that the older boys that went on their way, they went home, leaving Adam, just 6 years old, outside an exit he wasn't familiar with, all by himself.
So sad.
And I saw an interview with John where he said that they actually talked to the teenage security guard as an adult. She had become a nurse because she had carried that guilt her whole life.
About that.
And according to John, she was told by the management of Sears to keep her mouth shut and not tell anyone that she had told the boys to leave.
Did they fucking sue?
Our jaws are on the floor. That's why the podcast is currently silent.
All just
we both just went, what?
And our mouths
open. Wow. Wow. How old was she?
Fuck, dude.
17.
Fuck.
At the time.
She also
terrified.
Yeah. No.
Oh my God,
and
imagine being 17 and knowing that you were essentially one of the last people to see this kid alive.
Yeah. And that security guard that sent her to customer service, that was her that sent Reve. Like,
Oh my God,
in
goosebumps.
all of this happens, and they're like, you keep your mouth shut. You do not say anything about sending those kids out. And then Reve comes back, and she's just like, I need help, my son. And so she was like, oh, you need to go to customer service.
Jesus.
Oh my God. So what if it was such a short time frame. What if she would have said, what if the security guard was like, I told them all to leave, and she would have just like gone out the exit and he was like out there waiting for her? Because it was like such a short amount of time, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
So, as I said, after the Dahmer investigation, Adam's case went back on the shelf, and no new leads have come in a very, very long time, despite the fact that John and Reve never let up. So remember Joe Matthews, the detective that gave the polygraph to Jimmy Campbell?
Yes.
And right. So he had left the police force, and the Walshes, I think particularly Reve, were like, we have to know what happened to our son.
Mm-hmm.
And they reached out to him and hired him to do an investigation because the police had completely botched
Fucked
it.
it up.
I mean, just real bad. So even though he was no longer a detective, he agreed to take the case and went down to Florida. And so now there was a new police chief at the Hollywood Police Department, and this guy was more than happy for the help. And so the complete file was given to Joe and the Walsh family.
Wow.
And so Matthews comes across a tip that had never been followed up on. A 12-year-old girl had been at a Kmart with her mom. Just like Adam, the little girl had gone to the toy department alone while her mom shopped. While she was there, a creepy, scruffy man came up to her and asked her if she wanted to go for a ride.
No.
Ew.
Sufficiently creeped out, the little girl screams for her mom
Good girl.
and takes
Hell
off.
yeah.
That is
And
what you
so-
do.
Yeah. And so they report it, but nothing happens. 2 years later, the daughter catches a glimpse of a picture of a man on the front of the Miami Herald. And she's now 14 years old, and she just starts screaming, Mom, that's the man from the store. That's the man. The man was a picture of Otis Toole. Her mother immediately called police. They were never interviewed, and it was never followed up on. Another eyewitness had come forward in 1991 saying he thought he may have unwittingly witnessed the abduction.
Oh my God.
He said he saw a boy that sort of looked like Adam with an unkempt man, but the kid wasn't crying or acting up.
He probably assumed it was his parents.
And he
or
got
something,
in the car with the man. The witness had noticed, though, that the vehicle, which was a Cadillac, had a large dent in the front of it, and he was able to describe the car in detail. Joe wanted to confirm if Toole's car had a dent, but remember, the car had been lost.
or whatever.
But before the car was lost, it had been seized and photographed, so where were the photographs? Joe contacted the state crime archives and finds out that they have 98 photos. The archivist that he spoke with, archivist, anyway, whatever. The woman that he spoke with said in the 27 years since the crime, he was the only one that had ever requested them.
Why is it so hard for jobs to be done properly?
There are certain things
Why is everybody
that I
incompetent?
understand. Even the car, maybe something got mislaid, whatever. But these were actual
These are very good,
look
legit
good,
leads.
yeah. So anyway,
Oh my Lord.
in reviewing the photos, Joe finds some pictures of Otis's Cadillac, and he finds that distinctive dent exactly where and how the witness had described it.
Nope.
So Joe considers this to be evidence that not only was Toole in Florida at the time, that he was at that mall. When police recovered the car in 1983, they found Toole's machete in the car. And there are photos, there are luminol photos of the machete that apparently just show it covered in blood.
Oh.
Now, the photos ended up providing the strongest evidence against Toole. In particular, a roll of film that Joe found that police had never even developed. Now, I'm going to show you this picture. So the picture is of a patch of luminol from Tool's back seat floorboard, right?
Okay.
So the carpet. So many people believe that what we're seeing is an impression of Adam's face in blood, like almost like the Turin, you know, the one like
The shroud
of Turin or
Jesus
something like
Christ's face.
that. So this is the picture.
I don't like it. I see it.
So it's
Open
like
mouth,
open mouth,
nose, eyes.
yeah,
It makes my
Like a
stomach hurt.
clear.
and we'll post this photo as well.
Ugh, that really makes my stomach go wild.
Reve reviewed the photo at the time, and she was just like, "That's Adam. That's my son." However, there are many people that think that the luminol was merely reacting to metal in the car and not blood, and that those seeing a face are just seeing what they want to see.
I don't like what luminol does, though.
I mean, luminol will pick up things, but typically, like, you would have to then, like, you know, think about CSI, right? So they find a spot that
And then they
luminol
have
picks
to
up on,
test it.
and then they
That's
have
right.
to test it.
That's
So
right.
it doesn't just pick up blood, and that's kind of the same thing with
does
the
it pick
machete.
up metals?
It does
Because
pick. It
blood
picks
is-
up metals.
okay.
Exactly.
Oh, because blood has
Right. And
iron
so
stuff.
the same, you know, the same
makes
argument
sense.
could be made with the machete. They don't have the actual items. So yes,
Yeah.
the luminol could be reacting. It could be blood. That could be Adam's face, you know, but they
There's
don't
no
have the
for
car.
sure.
They don't have the machete. So, you know. So Joe posited the following theory, and this theory has been accepted by the Florida State Attorney's Office. Florida State Attorney's Office, not states. So after Adam was shooed out of the mall, Joe believes that Toole saw Adam and lured him into his vehicle with toys. He said that they were probably halfway to the turnpike before anybody even knew that Adam was missing. Adam would have very quickly become panicked and upset, which annoyed Toole. He believed that Toole pulled into a rest stop or pulled over somewhere and punched Adam in the stomach, and as he was gasping for air, Toole put his hands around Adam's neck and squeezed, and Adam died. He took Adam out of the car and decapitated him, putting the body in the trunk and the head in the backseat floorboard. Now, for me, I'm like, why would you just put the whole body in the trunk?
Yeah.
He thinks that Toole got off at an exit, walked out on the dock, and threw Adam's head in the water. Based on the evidence Joe Matthews discovered, the state believes Toole would have been arrested, tried, and convicted. And so the case is now considered closed with Toole as Adam's murderer. John and Reve also both believe that Toole was the one that murdered their son. John and Reve did receive a formal apology from the police department in a press conference for bungling the investigation.
Wow, that's never
Unlikely,
happened.
yeah.
Right?
That's very rare.
Yeah.
John said that the anger, hurt, and resentment like all went away after receiving that apology.
Wow.
I mean, resentment to the police department, not
Right.
for the
Yeah.
murderer's
Right.
kid. After the murder initially happened, the Walsh family was floundering. John lost a significant amount of weight. He wasn't sleeping. He was angry. He was suicidal. So he talks about very openly about the fact that he was just in so much pain. He just didn't want to be here anymore.
I don't blame. Yeah. Don't blame him.
Reve, however, so they had become public figures, and they had received like 50,000 like letters, to Adam's parents or whatever. And Reve read every single one of them.
Oh.
So she channeled her grief by founding the Adam Walsh Child Resource Center, a nonprofit which grew into several offices in several cities across the U.S. It was dedicated to legislative reform, and kind of watching her do that kind of pulled John out of his anger and depression, and he also became involved with it. And I mean, they really made advocacy their life.
Wow.
It later merged with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and John and Reve still sit on the board of directors to this day.
Wow.
Their advocacy efforts also led to the creation of the Missing Children Act of 1982 and the Missing Children's Assistance Act of 1984. The Adam Walsh Child Protection Safety Act of 2006 was enacted on July 27th, 2006, and made significant changes to federal sexual abuse, exploitation, and transportation crimes. Some of the high points include that now many of those sex crimes against children no longer have a statute of limitations.
Thank God.
Good.
And I would just like to pause here and say that no sex crime should have a statute of limitations. Like
Bullshit.
there should never be
No.
An amount of time that makes it okay for you to rape a kid.
Yeah.
right, or a woman, or a
Well,
man,
you're right.
or, you know,
Or you're
like,
right. A
as an
sexual-
adult, like
any-
any
yeah,
sexual
you're right.
assault, because victims. I mean, look at the Chris No thing, like, and the Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby. It took some of these women decades to be able to talk about what happened to them. So yeah, and this one, I mean, like, I get the point and I agree with it to an extent, but then it also kind of makes me a little like, It also permits the government to take DNA, even if the person hasn't yet been convicted of a crime.
Oh, I don't like that.
And it primarily focuses on the National Sex Offender Registry. So it made the 3-tier system. So you've got the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, the most likely to reoffend thing. And it also created tougher penalties for people who do not register as a sex offender upon their release from prison. So
That's valid. Everything's kind of valid except for that DNA thing.
yeah, the DNA thing is a little like...
It's not very American.
Yeah,
damn
it's
it.
like, I don't know if someone, I guess I think about it like someone could accuse Michael of that, right? And then they'd be like, okay, well, now we need your fingerprints before you go to trial. I'd be like,
Or we need your DNA.
yeah, or your
Yeah.
DNA. I'd be like,
Lawyer.
yeah, like,
Right.
no.
I mean, it's just it's one of those things where I think if they're convicted, maybe they should be able to take DNA, but I don't like the
Yeah.
idea that they can take DNA even if the person hasn't been convicted.
Yeah.
That's just like, it fucks with the
That
entire
just
process.
sounds like a civil liberties
Yeah.
violation to me.
I-
I'll have to ask my boss about that.
I was listening
Oh, yeah.
to Crime Junkie about a child who had gone missing, and it was where someone was like filming himself, like an adult with a child, putting it on the internet kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that on
And-
the Law and Order SVU. a lot.
Yeah, and there's a website. Oh my God. Tori just like almost fucking
Spit out.
spit it out.
Oh yeah, I saw that on Law
SVU.
I know that story. I saw it on Law and Order.
I've seen
Well,
many times.
Apparently, sex offenders are almost never let me go back. In like a neighborhood, when they're like, okay, a kid goes missing, we want to interview all the sex offenders in the area, 9 times out of 10, it is not a registered sex offender.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I was unaware of. But anyway, I thought it was interesting that registered sex offenders are almost never
And
the cause of a child abduction.
on TikTok, there are a couple of different people that go into chat rooms that pretend to be teenage girls to try and catch predators
Right.
and turn the info over to the...
That show was great, wasn't it? To Catch a Predator. Was that the show where
There was a TV show, but there are people on TikTok that are still doing it.
There's a
That's
special
great.
on Discovery Plus about it. Oh, I learned from Missy that certain cities will get paid more if they house
Yes.
sex
offenders.
offenders.
And
guess what
what?
Spokane is?
Yay! Oh.
We do have a lot, and
We
we do
do.
have I mean, and I will say, and we're going to talk about that here in a minute, but we one of the other things on here is that that act in 2006 provides civilian access to state websites to gain information on sex offenders. So we actually, here in Spokane, I know like Spokane News, and like
Yeah.
sometimes I'll even get like emails from the city that will say a sex offender has been released in your
Yeah.
area. And I got one in like, I feel like in the mail when I was living in Browns, because some guy like, and he was like a level 3, which is like most likely to
Ew.
reoffend, had been
No.
released back into my neighborhood. And I think he only was living like 2 blocks from me.
Jesus
And
Christ.
that was one of the reasons again why I was like, I need to buy a house.
Yeah, Browns
Not that-
is-
A house, you know, but so back to this. In addition to his advocacy work, in 1998, John became the host of America's Most Wanted, a television show dedicated to bringing criminals to justice by tips from the public. And he remained there until 2011.
The year I graduated high school.
He filmed 270 episodes
Fuck.
over that time period.
Jesus.
And that's really where most people
Know him.
from, unless you're Emily and you have no idea what America's Most Wanted is or who John Walsh is.
Or Prince.
He was also the host of The Hunt with John Walsh from 2014 to 2017. And he is currently the host of In Pursuit with John Walsh.
Gosh.
And he is on that show with his son, Callum. Yeah.
A lot of activity.
Is this a son that he had after?
Yes. So we're going to get to that in just a second.
Okay.
America's Most Wanted has brought nearly 1,200 criminals to justice
Shit.
and brought home dozens of missing children over its reign.
1,200.
Wow.
12, almost, it's like 1,187.
1,200 criminals.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty amazing.
Real good.
Yeah.
Considering otherwise they probably
never been caught. So in fact, John was at Elizabeth Smart's house when she returned home.
Wow.
And John said that she told him, and I don't know.
Oh God.
She said, supposedly she said, "I'm so sorry about Adam. You couldn't find him, but you found me." I don't know, but
that kind of sounds like wishful thinking.
it kind of sounds like she maybe said something and John made it that, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, for what you...
I apologize to both Mr. Walsh and Miss Smart in case that actually happened as it said. John's current show In Pursuit with John Walsh has brought 26 fugitives to justice and has recovered 8 children.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, you know...
I mean, you can be a dick and
He's
still
not
make a difference.
Like, that's
but...
the thing. You know, John Walsh is not a perfect person, but his advocacy has done a lot. But we're going to get into criticisms of John in just a second.
Hell yeah.
Despite rumors and admissions of infidelity after the disappearance of Adam, John and Reve remained married and are still married to this day, which is really a feat because it's something like 80% of marriages that lose a child end in divorce.
Yeah. Well, 50% of them already end in divorce.
Right.
So to add a kid, I can't even imagine.
John and Reve had 3 more children after Adam's disappearance, 2 boys and a girl, one of whom, that Callum, works with them in advocacy. Apparently, he had been working like in Hollywood as a music producer or something, and was just like, I really want to do this. And this was not directly related to John and Reve, but it is a response to Adam's disappearance, which is what I talked about that episode whenever this all came up. That Code Adam was a movement started by Walmart. And the code is announced when a child is lost or missing within the store. It alerts staff to lock all the doors and stand at the exits while a description of the child is broadcast over the intercom system.
Good.
By the late 90s, many other retailers had adopted the practice, and it is considered the predecessor to the Amber Alert.
God damn, Callahan. God damn.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the criticisms of John Walsh. So you asked if the Walshes sued Sears.
She did, but yes.
I did, yes.
Yes. Sorry, Lindsay.
Lindsay did.
You asked if the Walshes had sued Sears. They did, in fact, sue Sears, seeking damages because Adam had been abducted from their supposedly. I only found this in one law article, so I'm just prefacing that by saying I neither confirm nor deny this. Supposedly, Sears' lawyers produced evidence that Adam had actually been left alone for at least 90 minutes before he was abducted. They also deposed Jimmy Campbell, who disclosed that John and Reve frequently enjoyed both marijuana and cocaine.
Okay, well, I mean, you know what? You fucking guys, all right, listen.
Go play. And I'm gonna
first of all, it was the 80s when they were in hotels.
Everyone was
a lot of people were
doing coke and smoking weed.
Rail some coke
but
and
apparently
smoke some marijuana
this was... apparently they
always use that
I put
against you.
frequently enjoyed. I believe the article that I was reading said abused, but I don't know.
Oh my god.
Anyway, when they were unable to seal Jimmy's deposition, they dropped the suit. Now, other sources that I read said that the suit was dropped as both the Walshes and Sears came to the agreement that the suit was distracting from the advocacy work that the Walshes were trying to do. But Others say that, they were now becoming public figures. And John had a high-profile job at that time. He wasn't in TV yet, but he was dealing with a lot of money building properties. And so they say that the suit was dropped because they didn't want the drug use to become widely publicized. Because apparently it was only like written about in like 4 local news stories. It never made the national news.
I feel like if people tried to do that to me, I'd be like, yeah, I do snort coke and smoke a little weed.
But my child's on the leash, so what do you want from me?
I mean, I feel like the 90 minutes thing is way more of a bombshell than the cocaine and the marijuana.
That's the most shocking thing.
Yeah, and that is a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Another criticism is that in his book, Tears of Rage, which he wrote about the abduction, John openly discusses the fact that he started dating Reve when he was in his 20s and she was just 16.
Ew.
Okay.
And they were living in New York. Since the legal age of consent in New York is 17, had he been convicted then, he would have been subject to the same sex offender registry that he has pushed so hard for to get put in place.
I mean, when you try to be all high and mighty, there is always skeletons.
How old was he at the time?
He was in his early 20s. It's like 22, 23. And she was 16.
Only Keanu Reeves is pure.
It's hard. It's hard
Keanu
because
Reeves. If anything ever comes out about Keanu Reeves, I am going to lose my shit.
Yeah, 100%.
Like lose it.
Yeah.
Like rage on the earth.
Yeah. Oh, cry. He's been my love since I was 7.
I mean, you guys know how I love to play devil's advocate. Yeah. Because I immediately said ew, and then I thought, that's where, if Michael and I would have met when I was in high school, that's the age that we would have been.
I think, well, and I mean, when I was a senior in high school, well, I just graduated high school. I was 17 and I started dating a 23-year-old, which my parents were not happy about. And it didn't feel gross at the time, but I think it's the timing thing. It's not the age difference thing. It's the timing thing. And here's the deal. Here's where the national, like that, how the sex offender list, I think, is sort of flawed, because you can have a consensual relationship with somebody who's 16 and 17 or 17 and 18. And it sucks because the age of consent is different in every state. They leave that up to the states. So I don't know. I feel like somebody who's 18 and has a consensual sexual relationship with their 17-year-old girlfriend or even 16-year-old girlfriend should not be put on the sex offender registry for life and have their life ruined, where it might be appropriate in another state. Especially when that creepy ass dude from the Green Mile was able to marry a 16-year-old because they had parental consent. Fuck that noise. Over the years, John has also made some really controversial statements.
Oh my God, I remember that one.
We talked about in another episode, the one that I watched, where he said that Brian Laundrie should go out and kill himself and do everybody a favor. And that was the first time that I had heard John Walsh talk like that. And I was just like, whoa.
And I think that was the one that brought up John Walsh.
That's brought this whole thing up. And it's, it's crazy because I watched him in a lot of interviews, and it's always just like these sickos, these degenerates, these, I mean, he gets whatever. Anyway. So in 2006, he said that they should put exploding implants in the anus of sex offenders. And if they go out a certain radius, explode it. And that would send a big message.
Okay, well, I mean,
he's not wrong.
Yeah, but I kind of am like, that sounds like something I would say very dramatically. Yeah, but like,
not as a serious fucking thing.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And
not great, but
after he received quite a bit of backlash about that, he said it was just a joke and that nobody else found it funny. But he did later very seriously suggest implanting GPS tracking devices in sex offenders. And again, it's one of those things where, like, civil rights violation versus, like, that doesn't sound like a bad idea.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So this is our last thing. We're about to wrap this up, and then we'll have a brief discussion because I'm kind of curious to see what you guys think. So John has also been accused of predator panic. In 1983, he testified before Congress and gave several unsourced claims, saying things like there, 50,000 abducted and 1.5 missing children every year. Like, oh, sorry, that was not a sentence.
His unsourced
I thought it was me just not understanding.
No, he was telling Congress that there are 50,000 abducted children and 1.5 missing children every year. Which is a lot.
Oh, yeah.
He testified that the U.S. is littered with mutilated, decapitated, raped, and strangled children.
Oh, God.
Wow.
And so detractors are like, that number, or those numbers are wildly inflated.
Yeah.
In fact, in 1999, the U.S. Department of Justice, which, you know, who knows how much we can trust them, the U.S. Department of Justice published a study that found that only 115 cases of, quote, stereotypical kidnappings occur every year. And of those 115, only about 50 resulted in either death or the child not being located. A very big difference.
Yeah.
Than like 2 million or 1
and
point.
pillaging,
Yeah. And at the time when he initially testified, it was the Adam Walsh Resource Center, which began with like $1.5 million. And after he testified, the funding for both that as well as the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children grew exponentially. So basically, he's being accused of inciting panic in order to profit. And you know, when you look at like the annual salaries of some of the people on the board, like the CEO of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and I think it was like 2015, like the CEO's salary was like something like $450,000, and it accounted for a little over 1% of their total expenses as a charity. And I'm like,
I never understand that.
I realize that that's probably, you know, an incredibly stressful job, and your CEO, you're managing the whole thing, but if the point is supposed like finding children, like isn't that where the resources should be put, not $450,000? So that's
like the Susan Coleman fucking thing, where the money's just going to the upper people.
And so, you know, so that's another really big criticism. And I mean, that, to be fair, that is a criticism of a lot of big organizations, like the Salvation Army. So anyway, so that is
Adam Walsh.
Wow. And you know, it's, I don't know, to me it's still unsolved. I'm not convinced that Tool did it. I don't think
I'm not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt.
Exactly. I mean, there is a lot of circumstantial evidence, but there was also a lot of circumstantial evidence against Dahmer. Right. And I think, to me, Dahmer makes more sense.
Yes.
But I still don't necessarily think it was Dahmer.
No. I don't think it was Dahmer. I didn't think that at all. I don't know why I don't think that, but I don't know.
He was still beginning his journey.
Well,
serial killer journey.
And I understand that. And the only thing, I understand that, but I also think, well, if he was early in his journey, starting with kids makes sense. Mm-hmm. The reason I don't think it's Dahmer is because Dahmer wanted to save the skulls. He wouldn't have thrown it in a canal without trying to do something to it first.
Yeah, he would have saved all of it.
Yeah, I mean, he had him on his mantle and stuff, right?
And I think, I mean, honestly, one of the other things that, like, nobody discussed is if an animal had been gnawing on a head,
it could,
could an alligator have eaten the body? Is that why we never found Adam's remains?
Florida.
Well, exactly.
That's like where you put bodies.
Yeah. With alligators if you're in Florida, you know? They'll fucking eat anything.
So, I don't know. What do you guys think? Who do you think killed Adam Walsh? Do you think it was one of the people we talked about? No. Someone somebody just has gotten away with murder for 40 years?
Tool fits pretty well. But
now, let me just say too that a lot of that information about what Joe found came from the thing that I was the actual like show that I watched, and it was Joe talking about what he found, and that episode is very geared towards Tool did it.
They're probably prominent in Hollywood, right? Like this couple, and they have a cute little son. They probably are seen about. I think it's somebody that lived there. This probably still does, and likes to do this shit. That's my feeling.
I'm sorry, but I do not like Swiss, but the sandwiches that Emily made us for lunch smell
They
so good.
They do
And my mouth is like watering as
I'm
we're
sure you
talking.
can pick the cheese off. It's really good
I'll
ham.
just eat it. It'll be fine. I don't know. I think they spent a lot of time focusing on serial killers. And I don't know. Like, I don't think that Toole did it. I think that Toole said whatever anybody wanted him to say.
Yeah.
And there are no other children. Now, people that think that, like Joe Matthews says, well, Toole was an opportunist. If it turned him on to think he was going to do it, he would just do it. Like, there was no thought. But he was gay, but I don't think that he was a pedophile.
No, I don't.
I just don't.
Fit it
I just don't
me.
think it just doesn't make sense to me. That
it could also just been a passerby.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been it could have been.
I think it's just someone like quiet, and you just don't suspect them, and
it could have been someone too that maybe was a pedophile, kidnapped him, accidentally killed him, didn't know what to do, and then never did anything again. I mean, I don't know. I just don't feel like that the real killer has been found, I guess is my... And I should say they did eventually, after they declared the case closed, that Otis had done it, the Walshes were able to get Adam's head and bury it. So,
Jesus Christ, dude.
And they have gotten that back. So that's it. That's the story of Adam Walsh and how it changed. I mean, kids' faces on milk cartons. And I mean, I do sort of remember things changing in the 80s, just kind of like...
Did the Amber Alert happen pretty kind of like within the last 10 years, isn't it?
10 or 15. Google that.
96.
Okay.
Dallas, Fort Worth broadcasters team with
I'm
local
sure
police.
he probably really advocated for that, I bet.
Well, let me just say this. John Walsh is a human being.
Yeah,
right? He has human frailties, whether that be the fact that in his younger years he dabbled in drugs. So did I. So I can't.
Yeah, I still dabble in marijuana.
Everybody dabble, has or had or.
And so I don't hold that part against him. And as they were becoming public figures, I don't hold it against him that they dropped that suit, that they didn't want that becoming public knowledge. And they may, and it could be that they didn't want it becoming public knowledge because they didn't want it to hurt the advocacy work that they were doing. So I don't, any of that I don't hold against him. Things that he has said, like you said, we all say things. I think that this case and losing his child has shaped his view of humanity in a different way.
Totally.
And being so this kind of character as well. Publicly.
And I think that John Walsh as a human became John Walsh.
Yeah. John Walsh, Adam Walsh's dad,
and host and advocate, host, advocate, has made all these changes. And, it's kind of like Oprah, where, like, Oprah used to, like, be really down to earth, and, like, I loved Oprah.
But now she's Oprah.
And now she's like...
a fucking billionaire, and that's when they...
Right,
gone.
and, like,
that's
now
she's...
I stopped watching her show before it was moved to the OWN. I stopped watching it because, like, she just started getting, like, so mean and rude and, like, degrading to her guests. And I was just like, what happened to Oprah? And so, Oprah, don't sue me. She's got so much money.
She does.
And she's enough.
Wouldn't it be great if she sued us, is what I thought you were going to say. Wouldn't it be great if Oprah sued us?
That too, I mean.
We would be in the news.
It'd be part of our, like, hey,
tiny
we're Three's a Crime, and we've been sued by Oprah.
Yeah. That's our tagline. Yeah. But no, like, in all seriousness, though, again, Oprah does a lot of good. And so it's one of those things where nobody is 100% good. Nobody, except some of these people, are 100% bad. But even like Otis, like
everything's great.
If his life, his childhood, whether it was as dramatic as he made it sound, he obviously had a very fucked up child. Like he never had a chance. Henry Lee Lucas never had a chance. I mean, these guys, it doesn't excuse or eliminate what they did, but I just think about like what was little Otis like, and if things
I
had been
always think
different,
about
would
that
he have
with
been who he was?
Killers. I'm like, oh God, I wonder what it was like.
Yeah. So thank you guys for listening.
We love you. Thank you.
Remember who you are and what you represent, and
don't represent a dick.
Don't take kids at malls.
Please don't take it.
don't take kids that are not
Period.
yours
This is
ever
why
anywhere.
I was on a leash as a child. No joke.
I was not on a leash, but when Oma would take me to the store, I would go to the end of the aisle and I would go, Oma, tell me to come back. And she'd be like, picking up soup or whatever. She'd be like, Emily, come back. And I'd be like, look, I'm listening. And I'd like hide in the rounds of clothes and I'd always be like, Oma, tell me to come back. And I would always see her roll her eyes like, Emily, come back. And I'd be like, I'm here. I'm such a good listener.
When I was
This
about
is a lot for therapy. That was very loaded story. Good Lord.
when I was about 2 or 3, my dad worked at a shoe store in the mall. So this is,
Oh, shit.
yeah. So my dad had to like stop by to like pick up a paycheck or something. And he sat me down in one of the chairs and he said, you stay right there. Now I'm a toddler. Toddlers don't listen.
No,
They don't
Tori
stay.
toddler.
Tori
Right.
Todd.
So my dad comes out and I am gone.
Oh no. You need a
And
leash
he-
too.
Yes.
The
and
fear.
he panicked. And I mean, if I was 2 or 3, this was probably in like 1981 or 1982.
Right.
And yeah, so he panics and he runs out and he's running all over the mall. And then apparently there I was just
Oh my
toddling
God.
down the.
Okay.
All right, let's go eat.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Wow, that was a lot of information. Okay, bye.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. We put out new episodes every single Wednesday, and if you're impatient like me, be sure to become a Patreon where you can get your episodes early each week. For as little as $2 a month, you not only significantly support the production of this podcast, but you'll also get extra benefits and perks for being one of our special Patreon weirdlings. Go to patreon.com/throughthecrime for more information. For all of our links related to our socials, affiliate codes, where to listen, and everything else, go to linktree/throughthecrime.